Modern Dad Counts. Oh, I think it just started, so I'll start over. Hey, I'm Chris Eischen, and this is the Modern Dad Council. Joining me today is Jay Forty of the Greatness Zone and Ready for Life, and Eric Lehman of the Game Changer Movement. The Modern Dad Council meets to discuss important issues around parenting, relationships, and everything else in the world around being a modern dad. And today we're discussing choice. And starting us off today is Eric Lehman of the Game Changer Movement. So, Eric.
Hey, thanks so much for humoring me. I've been doing a lot of life cleaning and house cleaning and just sorting through papers that are years and years old. And um, in that sort, I found this index card with this quote on it that just, had this message that I felt we should discuss or embrace. So it's called the Notes on an Unhurried Journey. When we adults think of children, there is a simple truth which we ignore. Childhood is not preparation for life. Childhood is life. A child isn't getting ready to live. A child is living. The child is constantly confronted with the nagging question, what are you going to be? Courageous would be the youngster who, looking the adult squarely in the face, would say, I'm not going to be anything. I already am. We adults would be shocked by such an insolent remark, for we have forgotten, if indeed we ever knew, that a child is an active, participating, and contributing member of society from the time he or she is born. Wow, I'm missing a whole. Hold on. I'm missing a whole sentence, but I guess I'll just say no child will miss the zest and joy of living unless these are denied him by adults who have convinced themselves that childhood is a period of preparation. How much heartache would we save ourselves if we would recognize the child as a partner with adults in the process of living, rather than always viewing him as an apprentice? How much would we teach each other, adults with the experience and the children with the freshness? How full both our lives could be. A little child may not lead us, but at least we ought to discuss the trip with him. For after all, life is his and her journey too.
Hmm.
So I found that, and whenever I read that, I just I get goosebumps and feel like it's what we're here to do as the Modern Dad Council, is to redefine this experience and to also find evidence for where others are redefining it in advance, for us. Because that quote was from a book that I believe was published in 1991 or 93 or so. So I can get the reference if I didn't crop it out of the picture before I
Yeah, Eric, make sure you tell us where that came from. That's a great one.
sure. So I mean, I'll just throw it out there and regroup myself. But when you hear those words, what does that mean to you all and your role as fathers?
Right. Did you want to lead us off there, Jay?
Well, I always have a perspective. I don't want to disappoint you, Chris. I heard a great line by John Kabat-Zinn, Eric, that made me, and when you were reading that, it made me think of that our kids are like little Zen masters. They're here to remind us on who we used to be and then forgot. And so I wonder, if the quote that you shared with us today is really the reminder that, as we land in life and we grow through life, we actually unlearn a lot of the things we came packaged and ready, and the wisdom was there, and we chose, or we learned ways to avoid it. And I think John Kabat-Zinn's line of kids being little Zen masters is that they show us and guide us back to what we always knew. And I think that just plays into what you're talking about. How do we look back, or how do we look at our kids and realize that our role is to both learn from them and help them be more of what they already are instead of trying to turn them into, who we need them to be or who society needs them to be. And I know that's a bold and in your face kind of statement because, what if everybody did their own thing? Could you even pull a society off? If everybody's, so many people are non-compliant to the ways of moving through life, which is, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you have a family, and that process that we all think is the process actually doesn't really ever, in many cases, doesn't help us ever really materialize into who we are as our greatest self. It does a very good job of keeping us busy and running until we run out of steam and end. But we missed kind of the point of what I think your quote was all about, Eric, which is, as a kid, we're already there. And how might we, as we move through life, stay more in that space than less in that space?
That really makes me think of that. And I know I sent this out in the email, but it's that being a human being over a human doer. And I get caught in that doer mode all the time. You get busy with the stuff going on at the house or with work or, whatever it is, and you kind of lose focus. And so to me, that's what that is. It's about like refocusing on who you are and what matters to you. And that's kind of like a child just does what they want to do, without getting yelled at, right? They don't worry about what other people think they look like. If they like a song and they want to dance to it, they're going to jump around. They're not like, do I look good? Do I look good? Are people looking at me funny? Yeah. So, I don't know, it's getting that kind of innocence back or rediscovering it about yourself or being maybe more confident within who you are to where those outside voices aren't as loud or as influential. So,
Eric, when you were reading that as well, and Chris, what you just mentioned made me think of, so Ready for Life is one of my websites. And now I'm hearing Ready for Life. Why am I getting you ready for life when you came ready for life? But maybe our kids didn't come ready for the way this life is. And that says to me, so do we try and switch it back? And as parents, what are the things we can do so that they do get to show up as the same high energy, aware of their greatness person that they were as a kid, that they kind of got schooled out of and social media'd out of, so that they forgot things about who they were. So all that was running through my head as you were talking, and both of you were talking. And so I think Ready for Life, maybe the right thing is it's returning to be ready for life. I already was, and the Ready for Life isn't to go into someplace new. It's actually a return. And I wonder, so I'll throw that out as parents. So great, there's philosophy and all that, and I get that, but you still got to eat at the end of the day. You still got to, have a family that has a roof over their head. So you can sit and pontificate about this stuff, or you can say, well, where's the practical part of this? What do we do with our kids? How do we help be a modern dad by helping our kids return to who they really are? And one more question that comes with it, because I always stack my questions. Is this preparing them to be successful in life or overwhelming them?
Say more about that question before you throw it out there. Like, what are you saying? Is society or is parental pressure, or is what are you saying? What is our role?
Well, I'm saying, if the return to who they are is truly where they would be their biggest, best, and most amazing self, but society doesn't want that, then by us getting them back into that space, do we just make their life tougher? We have now reminded you how different and unique you are in a world that wants you to blend. So I'm always in conflict with that your life will be easier if you look and act like everybody else, but your life won't be your life then. Your life will be everybody else's life. So in 1 minute, as a parent, I want you to be safe and secure and make your way in a really weird world. But in the next minute, I want you to shake that world up. Weren't you the one, Eric, talking about, what was it? Create a ruckus.
Yeah.
You know, that you're supposed to create a ruckus around the things that are not right. And so, you know, in 1 minute I want you to go through life and be safe and secure and be happy, and life will be gentle and non-confrontational and all that stuff. And though I want that, what I really want you to do too is to be authentic and your most amazing self, which I know will be almost 180 degrees from the first wish that I had for you, which is move through life quiet and you know, in places where you get, you know, unaccosted by your mean and sometimes antagonizing world.
You know, I think of the one of the books that has deeply influenced me in my life and my perspective on love is actually A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Yep.
And you know, what a great title to really speak to, you know, what it is that we are here to do and be. You know, so in a way, you know, Ready for Life is sort of admitting that there's a lot of unlearning that we helped, you know, be about, you know, we helped teach, so that I think we as the modern dads, we're in this transition zone. We're kind of midway through our role as parents. We're changing our game, you know, to kind of tap into to my world. But I feel like I just watched another, like I've been geeking out on YouTubes from a lot of the real, you know, game changers in the world who have, like, you know, privatized space travel, and there was an observation that a lot of the mega
Oh, lost you, Eric. I loved where.
Expensive.
Yeah.
He was going to someplace big in this one too.
Right.
We talked the other day, and I thought he was in the same space.
Yeah, because it's well, what he's talking about, I don't know. He's talking kind of about his life, right? And I don't know if I can even lead off of where he's at.
We were talking the other day about this, that he's been tuning into some very big world thinking. And so part of our conversation was, where is there space for dads to be part of this big new world thinking? And new world just means, how are we returning to things that maybe we've wandered away from? You know, and maybe the industrial age did a very good job of making us think that things are more important than people, and that everybody else has your answers and not you. And those kinds of things have helped us wander away from our connection to being more aware of ourselves and then showing up, you know, more significantly. Eric, I'll pass it back to you. I was trying to explain where I thought you were. So go ahead. You were talking about space exploration.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like all these, and if you got there, great. You know, all these mega entrepreneurs seem to have, you know, been put on the Asperger's and autism spectrum, and it's really interesting. Like, you know, we watch movies like The Social Network, and we see, you know, all these characters who are socially inept in a way, and it's almost like you need to be a certain amount of, I don't know, like have a certain disconnect from the way most people relate with and to each other in order to proceed in bringing out the gift that you are here to bring. And so I guess that's, I don't know if that's where you were going, but that's what I'm kind of just curious about.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you saying like you need to really? It's these people they're like kind of in the, I don't want to say outcasts of society, but they live on the fringe kind of a thing, and they're more self-focused or as opposed to being extroverts, they're more introverts, so therefore they're more entrepreneurial.
I think, Chris, I think what it is that biologically there are some people who have an advantage at being not connected to the common mindset of everybody. And,
Okay.
and they're a small group. And there's a larger group of people who are not biologically predisposed to that, meaning there isn't something in their brain chemistry that disconnects them from that need to always fit in and look like everybody else, that they're a little bit more able to see things differently and to allow themselves to be in that space. Most of the rest of us just have to learn it, and it's a hard lesson because there's so much pressure to fit in and so many loud voices that says, here's how, but the ability to touch and bring forward your greatness, then that frequently requires you to be a little bit disconnected from what everybody else says it has to be so you can actually discover it and bring it. And that, I think, is right back to Eric's initial quote, that what came packaged in our kids is the very visible amount of their greatness, very visible in the way that they live. And then we send them off to school and we add all these layers of tape and paper and everything on top of it, so we've kind of hidden it. Some kids can't want that, and continue to see the world from their unique perspective. Those, if you take a look at the profiles of some of today's greatest entrepreneurs, Eric's point is that they were borderline Asperger's, and some of what comes with that brain biology is the less of a regard for what everybody else or how everything else actually has to work. The most of the rest of us then, with all that tape and paper, have done a very good job of making us not see what we're great at, but make us feel like we fit. And we seem to choose that over realizing our greatness and bringing it forward and doing something big. Maybe they're the same. In most cases, I find in teaching college kids, they're not the same. That the tape and the paper and the covering matters more to them than the awareness and the delivery of their greatness, their uniqueness. That it feels so much better for them to blend rather than stand out. Standing out is really weird and really hard. And that's what I meant at the beginning with, if we are modern dads, and we help our kid develop their uniqueness only to help them stand out and feel ostracized, how have we helped them? Where I know that the bigger picture is when you're courageous enough to be it and do it, then that might have been the right thing. But it also then creates some absolute daily conflict with them standing out in a world where standing out people get picked on and bullied and some other things. And we sometimes accidentally could make our kids' lives a little bit more difficult by trying to make it right, which is connect to what it is that you are amazing and should deliver to your world. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It keeps bringing to mind my son. He's a teenager, 14, kind of just in that self-discovery age. And your book, Jay, The Greatness Zone, I have it over here. I was seeing if I had a closer copy. But he read that, and that really got him exploring more about himself. And so in that, heading down that journey of I know myself more, so I don't need to do what these people think is cool or whatever. I can be more of my independent self and be proud in my uniqueness. So that's pretty cool and exciting to see him falling into that understanding of who he is. Because I know at that age, that was a struggle I went through. Is I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know, when I was getting ready to graduate high school and go to college. What do you want to do with your life? I have no clue. and I think a lot of kids go through that.
And a lot of parents go through that. And
Yeah.
Maybe so that it feels more comfortable blending, even if you're not entirely happy or not entirely in line with who you are, because you don't know who you are. And one of the things we found with some of the stuff we're trying to do at the Greatness Zone is the greater clarity you have about you, the greater choices that you make. And the more you make choices that fit you, the more confident you feel. And the more confident you feel, the more courageous you are to go and be who you really are. But part of feeling the courage comes from your ability to know that what you do well. It's your piece. It's your thing. You do it well. So it's funny. I was meeting with a group of 2 teachers today from an alternate high school. They were mentors in a youth leadership program that we just finished teaching. They had some paperwork I needed to get the kids in the program there certification for their hours for their community service project. So we were talking about the program and talking about things, and one of the things that they said was that in looking at themselves and trying to fit in, there are some things that they didn't even know existed, and therefore what they wanted to do was to kind of blend in anytime they could, and that it's really hard for them growing up in a tough minority school to stand out. So the son of one of the teachers loves to bake, but this is a really tough kind of gang neighborhood, minority black neighborhood in our city, that he said, I couldn't possibly let anybody know that I do this. Couldn't possibly. When he could probably be an amazing baker, an amazing chef. But the pressure of fitting in, or maybe it's even a safety thing, is so significant that there isn't the courage yet. If he were off to a scholarship and out of the neighborhood, then he could embrace it. And that's what I meant, that sometimes by encouraging our kids to be who they really are, in the short term we don't make it easier for them. In the long term I think we do. But we still have to live through the short term with them. And how do we help them stay courageous and bold and strong and confident when they're doing their thing, but the world around them says that's not a thing to do. We don't do that. And that, that's all part of, return back to who you were as a kid. And the wisdom that we had back then, when the world wasn't pushing back, we made some really good decisions for ourselves. And then we grew up and the world pushed back, and sometimes the push is too heavy and we just go with where it pushes us.
Yeah, it seemed like there was a time or an era of where open thinking was really encouraged. And then it's like we got into that industrial age, and it was like, now the majority of us are being taught to think this way instead of that independent thinking. So it's kind of getting back into that independent thinking again. Now we need to reinvent ourselves as a society, really.
Sound familiar, Eric, and the stuff from Seth Godin? That our schools trained us to think like our workplace needed us to think, and then our workplace changed, but we didn't change the way we think or teach.
And he made a statement saying that he no longer believes in resumes, because he says, congratulations, you have now perfectly documented that you've been trained to take orders and live by other people's thinking.
Yeah.
Congratulations, I want that job. Nope, don't. And then I guess to kind of follow some of the other YouTubes that I've been taking in, is that when our technology is expanding in so many ways, so there have been a multitude of expansions and kind of new ways of living that happen between generations, so that we have family who our parents' generation were raised where you could get your gold watch at IBM, and that was an option, and that was the comfort zone. That was the ideal way to live. And now that's no longer an option. And it's partially no longer an option because I don't think we want it anymore. I don't think any of us, want to necessarily be known for getting the gold watch in one, firm other than a firm of our own creation. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is I'm in this transition question period where I'm like, does there really need to be a rebellion phase of parenting and being a kid? You know what I mean? Can we coexist on the same team? And instead of saying, I think my job is to help my child not make the same mistakes I made. My job is to be their number one fan and to just love them up and let them know that the world is totally different. So there's no way that I have the expertise to tell my kids how to live in this current world. In a way, they actually have more expertise than we do, unless we are crazy early adopters on all that it means to live right now.
So I don't know how that lands with all of you.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
We naturally presume that our kids are rebelling, and really maybe what they're all trying to do is to get back to where they were, and here we are trying to drag them kicking and screaming into our version of their world. And maybe they know the world a little better. And now I guess I'm back to John Kabat-Zinn's, comment that, our kids are Zen masters. What if the biggest lesson in this was for us and not for them? What if they're here to teach us more about how to live because we've done a very good job of losing it, and they're a little bit more tuned in than we are about what really matters. If you really want to get connected to the moment, spend an hour with a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old. I mean, their moment is their moment. They're not dwelling on, who's worried about what and who's saying what about whom and how am I going to make this happen and do I look cool in this stroller? I mean, none of that's going on. They're just totally present, having a great time scrunching leaves or picking up ants or any of that stuff. And now I know we have to be responsible enough. Well, let me say it. I'm not sure I know we have to be responsible and manage a family. That we can't just sit on the sidewalk picking up ants, but well, unless we're an entomologist and we've discovered it because we did spend all that time when we were a kid. So I guess the question I have is, of all of that, where is the modern dad perspective in this? How can we be bold enough to challenge some of the things that say life must look like this for us to say, not my life and not my kid's life, so that we could then be there in a new way where it isn't about the conflict. That we always say, that's not always, many times, the teenage years are terrible because our kids are rebellious. Well, you'd be a little bit rebellious if somebody's dragging you into places that don't fit you over and over again. So I do a lot of work in the workplace, and one of the things that the boomer generation says to me all the time as we're talking about how to attract, hire, and retain employees is this younger generation has no sense of loyalty. They have no sense of work ethic. And that's just not true. They have a different sense of loyalty and a different sense of work ethic. And their work ethic and loyalty is based on whether it fits them and they feel like they're significant and productive in it. And if they're not, they're just quicker to bail on something that they know is wrong. In other words, they've developed their voice. So how do we then applaud them for being aware of what fits and doesn't fit them? And they can't just say, look, I hated it, so I left. Then my question, I guess, as both a parent and a coach would be, so what are you going to do next? But that it then gets us back into not fighting with our kids about how they move through life, but walking with our kids to find out what they're seeing and how we might be able to guide them as they see things in life. And I wondered to tag onto your comment, Eric, if that would eliminate a lot of this, teenage rebellion stuff that parents are busy mandating instead of asking, and kids are just trying to be in a place that feels right in a body and in a mind that they're not quite sure how to wear yet.
Well, and one of the things that I'm really glad that I don't know if I stumbled upon it or I was patient enough for it, but for a long time, even with the Game Changer movement, I was saying, maybe we need to use our energy to get kids away from video games in general and violent video games specifically. But then all of a sudden, some switch, just flicked in my heart and saying, you know what, no, like that's my agenda, and what if I could meet them where they are, and create a game, that we want to play with them, and rather than only like being the person who controls how much time that our kids get on these video games, why don't we figure out how to create games that we want our kids to be playing, and to actually spend that time with the word with keeps on going up, because I think even even when we talk about service, which I used to be about 100%, I'm more about community now than service, because I feel like the longer the wider definition you give to the word community, the smaller definition there actually is for service in a way, or the smaller the opportunity is for actual service, where it's not beautifully reciprocal. Does that make sense? So like, if we are aligned with our kids and they know that we're their biggest fans and that we don't have to create this adversarial tension just because that's what launched us from the nest. Jay, you and I were talking about the idea of having a YouTube college in a way where we could learn a lot of the basics for what we needed to do in our post high school time, and then and perhaps those next 2 years, 19 and 20, might be spent or 18 and 19 might be spent still at home. And I didn't really share this while I was on the phone with you, but I was like, heck no! Like I was like, there's no way I was as a teenager I was ready to sign on for another 2 years, and that's because of this kind of ready-made adversarial tension. So I'm curious because a lot of the stories I've heard from other kids, and it's not the norm, it's definitely the exceptions, is like there are a few parent-child dyads who would be totally fine with that, and I look at them as weird, but maybe he's looking at me as weird, you know what I mean? So like, not that there's a should, but like, I wanna embrace different thinking and just realize that even this whole thing called adolescence might not have to look the same way it did for us. So maybe we're putting too much into biology and saying, oh, every kid is just gonna, they're gonna have this awkward phase, they're gonna go through puberty, their voice is gonna crack, and it's just gonna be, awful, and they're gonna rebel, and they're not gonna want to walk with us in the mall, and what do we do? Instead, I haven't noticed that. Like, my kids don't necessarily say, "Hey, Dad, 20 paces," So maybe I'll face that, but maybe I won't. So who knows?
Well, Eric, the research out on the younger generation is some great people. Bruce Tulgan does a lot of work on the Gen Xers and the millennials, and when they're identifying the profile or some of the behaviors of it, this younger generation, they actually like their parents. That was one of the findings. It's not unusual for them to want a family vacation and for them to sit down and have game night, and I think when we talk to a lot of parents, I think we find that. I think there are a number who are losing their kids because of the amount of time the kids are on social media or on connected to the outside world. But I think if you pull some of that away, I think that the younger generation are not like when we didn't think our parents to be cool or hip. And it was 20 paces or drop me off in the corner and I'll look like I walked here instead of got a ride. And but the younger generation, and it's not everybody, but so the thinking that 2 more years at home, I wonder if that would make parents pull their hair out more than kids pull their hair out. The parents are the one, no, it is time for you to go. You cost me too much, the way you eat and the way you use all our resources, and or could it really be a really productive period? In the thinking of Ready for Life anyway, high school just seems to be an artificial break. It's this random cut in the middle of things that came from, according to Seth Godin's, this way we decided education should be. Why is 12th grade the place where we think we should launch you? Back in hundreds of years ago, it was a whole lot sooner than that. But and I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that it's worthy of a conversation to say, are you ready to go out and make your way because you're clear, confident, and courageous about being who you are? If that's the case, maybe you should go. And what does go look like? To me, all of those, if we could be open enough to say it doesn't have to look like you leave high school, you go to college, I think of the pressure we take off our kids, but at the same time think of the accountability we expect of them, and think of the ability for them to navigate their world in their own way. And I know it's not what's normally done, but I don't know why the word normal shows up in the word normally. You know, there's nothing normal about what is normally done.
Yeah.
It's what's conventionally done, and what normal is normal for you or normal for me would be a little bit different. And so maybe what's differently done is the better way of saying it.
I like normal to be referred to as your comfort zone. So your comfort zone is different than their comfort zone, and what is comfortable is normal for you. But everybody's comfortable or normal is different.
Yep.
in relation to their comfort zone. So what a lot of what you're talking about just is bringing up this moment for me. I had my niece and nephew over here the other day, and my mom needed me to watch them for about 4 hours, and they're 2 and 3 years old. And so I'm kind of like, all right, my daughter's 6. It's been a few years, and
a lot of practice.
Yeah, and they take a lot of energy, and it was one of those things like with my daughter, I'll be like, go in your room and play. I don't have to give her my full attention all the time. And so I kind of tried to do this with the kids. I was like, I'll set this up for them and they'll play. And then I walk away and I was exhausted. I had a really busy week and I just had a lot going on, so I was tired. I didn't necessarily want to like show up to watch these kids. You know what I mean? Like I was
nice
cool.
To acknowledge it.
Yeah, I was cool with them being there, but I didn't. I was really didn't want to have to like be there. But anyway, long story. Let me get to my point, I guess. All right. So I set this stuff up for the kids to play, and I think I could walk away, and that didn't work because now they're coming in. And I was like, you know what? What kind of uncle do I want to be? Now, we say this on the Modern Dad Council. What kind of dad do I want to be? How do I want to show up for my kids? But this situation, it wasn't my kids. I was tired. I was doing a favor for my mom, But I asked myself, what kind of uncle do I want to be? How do I want my relationship with my niece and nephew to be? And I was like, you know what? I got to go play with them. I got to sit there and be present with them. And that really, what you were talking about, Jay, just brought that choice that I had, that moment where I looked and I said, I have an option right now, to choose to get my kids to keep an eye on them so I don't have to, so I can just relax or, do the things I was doing, or do I stop what I'm doing and just be present with them? And when I asked myself what kind of uncle do I want to be, it was pretty clear what kind of uncle and what my choices were and what my best choice was. And that was to show up and to be present in my niece and nephew's lives. And so, focusing on that and getting in there and playing with them and, being silly and being goofy and not, and I think if we maintain that type of a relationship with our kids, yes, I'm doing this at an uncle level, but I do that, and I try to be really aware of that with my own kids, that I'm being present for them. But I guess the fact that it was my niece and nephew, it came across a little different, and so it was like bringing me back to, I used to do this with my own kids, and then over time I practiced and learned, and so I show up more presently on a consistent basis now than I once did. And I think that's kind of the key. My whole point is that's the key to having that. You can keep the kids at the house another 2 years out of high school because you have a good relationship with them, and the kids aren't so anxious to move out because you have that good relationship with them, because you're present with them and you play with them and you are literally a part of their lives.
That's what I think. As the quote that I had earlier from Jon Kabat-Zinn, that's what I think a Zen master does. It forces you to show up to the moment. That's what kids do. It's not like a puppy where you can put it behind the gate and You'll clean up afterwards, but you can go on and do what you need. Kids are, how about this? What about this? Why is this? How about this? I'm hungry. I need this, and in it, they do this very good job of bringing you into the moment. And you can't really be in two places at once. We say this all the time on everything we teach. Get out of your mind. You can multitask. You can't. What you can do is, several tasks pretty quickly, but if you're going to be really present and gather enough information to do something well, it's not going to be because you got your hand on this, your foot on this, and your mind on that. And it just doesn't work. It's not the way our brains work. So it does a very good job of us, of connecting back with the kid to remind you of what's important. And what's important is this person in this moment and us together. And what gets created in that, serves them when you're not together. I mean, you've just built some memories with your niece and your nephew on what they can expect from Uncle Chris, which has got to be huge going forward in a world where there's fewer and few people you can expect something big from. So good for you for doing that, and good for you for acting like a dad in your nephew. That a totally present, loving, caring, interested, a creative person is another way of saying a dad, at least in my vocabulary. It's not the responsibility part of it, it's how you choose to show up to it. And you did that, you did that beautifully, so, high five to you on that. Well, and I know you must have struggled with it, but so you're changed, that's the other part. So you were changed by that. You were present in that moment, and so were they. And the things that maybe you were worried about some of the things that need to get done, but you showed up to that moment, and that you is a bigger, more amazing you. And I bet the creativity that came out of you in that moment was more robust than maybe it would normally have been because you were really there. And you accessed these greater abilities that seem to evade us because we try and hide them behind 7 things being done at once.
Right. And that's why, I like to share those experiences that I go through for those guys out there going, I feel that anxiety or that, like, man, I really want to go do this. and they struggle with that internal voice, because I struggled with that for a long time, and it really takes a practice of, to show up. It's not something that we're raised to do, to show up in the moment. We really get indoctrinated with, keeping busy. So, yeah,
well, I'm so with you on that, because it's also like, when we first became fathers, what quote unquote responsibilities did we take on before that baby, that miracle came into the world? What expectations were we layering on top of this miracle that was about to be presented to us? And how cool would it be if we could welcome that miracle with the confidence that we have all the programming inside, to be present, to check in with our highest selves, and make those decisions based on our current world, rather than generation upon generation of how they did it. So and I don't, it's not a fully fleshed out concept, but like, how do we, because I'm just thinking of all the things that I would have done differently if I became a father right now, as compared to how I did things when I was first a father. And fortunately, I can have those conversations with my kids if they're still in the house, and really go there with them. But I can't have those moments back. So I feel like there's a huge opportunity for us to serve, getting back to that world of service, and to give brand new dads permission to check in with their own inner guidance, and to say, you got this, and to instead of necessarily give people advice for how we would do something, just help build people's confidence so that they know that they got this.
Yeah.
And that there's so much in our internal DNA that, I mean, like, you knew, Chris knew how to show up. You know, it wasn't a hugely intellectual process. You were in the moment. You made one big choice. I'm going to be present with the kids rather than not be with the kids. And I think that's the macro choice you made. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, once you were in the moment, it was a choice to either be in the moment or not be in the moment. That was the choice.
Right.
And we've had that for all of our lives, but I feel like, at least for me, I'm finally getting to this present moment, and it took me 42 years to do that.
Right. That's why I talked so much about that practice. And, you know, it's a practice every day. That's that oxygen mask going on every day, and it's a struggle. And the thing is the thing I fear most is that people watch the show or listen to, you know, these podcasts, and they think, what's wrong with me that I can't have that? It's like, no, you know, this isn't as easy as it looks. You know, there's a lot of struggles going on, and there's a lot of learning that happens. So I just think it's so important that everybody out there understands that even though I'm part of the Modern Dad Council, and I have a Kick-Ass Dad podcast, I have all of the, you know, this stuff, or, you know, I don't know, I'm this expert, I guess, right? Like, I struggle every day, and you know, that opportunity with my niece and nephew was just an experience that I went through, that I was able to show up and recognize those feelings, and it's like, okay, I felt this, I went through this, I experienced this. Hey, have you ever had this feeling and this experience? Okay, it's perfectly normal. and that's one of those moments where you get to make a choice, a greater choice. And if you continue to notice those moments and practice that behavior, you're on a good track. Right? So that's kind of the essence of all of what we're talking about today, really. Because my thing is I want to be able to share this wisdom with other people and then say, oh, okay, how do I take that wisdom and apply it to my life? Well, these are those moments, right? So, and Jay, you're great at giving us those practical steps. So do you think, like, you could give some practical steps to kind of close out the show?
We were kind of all over the place on this show today, and a lot of philosophy, you know, and I love that, and I encourage dads to think big. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's the first one: is find some time and let yourself connect with as big of thinking as you can go to. In it, see where it takes you, and then see what changes. The second one, I think, Chris, and you said it beautifully, was, hey, none of us are experts at this. I wrote a book called The Greatness Zone. That doesn't mean I'm in mine. You know, I'm struggling to always be in that. I at least know what it looks like, and then that creates some awareness that says, oh, how did I get way out here? I should be over here. So the ability to think big and the ability to watch where you are, to then say, is that where I want to be? I mean, that's the guidance I give to everybody, dads in particular. Could you step out of where you are to watch it enough to say, is this right for me? About anything, how I'm parenting, how my relationships are, how much time I spend with my kid, not to feel any pressure by it, just to be aware of it. Just notice, is it where I want it to be? And if the answer is yes, give yourself a high five. If it's no, say this one thing, or ask this one thing. So what do I want to do next? What do I want to do that's different? That's it. No punishment, no, you know, verbal lambasting, no, you're terrible, none of that. You just noticed, oh, here's a little area that could get better. And if you keep doing it, now maybe I need to change my habits around this. That little bit of awareness. So I guess, Chris, two things to think about. One is go think. You know, spend some time we talked philosophy today, and I think it's important that dads think with philosophy. The second one is step out of where you are and notice it. Show up. And in that, decide, am I doing well? Attaboy. I'm not doing well? No punishment, just what do you want to do next and try something new. And with that, I think an awful lot of the pressure of being a perfect dad goes away because perfection's out. It's the booby prize of life. But what you can do is get progressively better by watching and thinking big.
Awesome. Eric, did you have anything you wanted to close out with?
Well, sure, and I think some of it is just kind of, more from a sharing place is like, I'm about to celebrate my 20th Cornell reunion this afternoon and the rest of the weekend, and I'm gonna try my best to be the me that I am now. I'm just also gonna be in observation to see how people are fluffing up their stories and and just I'm gonna do my best to stay out of that that comparison group. I know who I am, and for some amazing reason recently I've just felt more like Eric, like the me that I was born to be, and I'm just gonna be in observation mode. So the reason that I wanted to share that quote this particular afternoon is I want to look at Cornell as whether as an experiment and to say was I a hurried or an unhurried child and if I was a hurried child, then how much of my childhood can I get back this weekend? So it's going to be interesting, and so without judgment, I am going to close this call and have the best 20th reunion that anyone could ever have because I'm in it, and actually looking forward to meet the people that I didn't form deep friendships with, 20 years ago, because I'm a different person now and they're different people now. So the people I liked 20 years ago, I might not like, and vice versa. So I'm just excited about being me and letting go of any label, including Cornell grad, even though I'm going to be surrounded by them. So it's going to be interesting.
Very beautiful.
Have
I
fun.
love that. Yeah, definitely. All right, well, with that, this has been the Modern Dad Council. Today, we talked about a lot of things, so thank you for joining us, and be sure to check us out next week. Thank you.